Hope you are doing well. My name is Valerie. Just checking that we're live. We're live here on Whatnot. Should be live over on YouTube as well. If you're just joining us, hello. I hope you are having a great time. I see us there. We are live over on YouTube as well. So thanks for being here today. My name is Valerie. I am a cruise director, but I am also the author of Seymour, Alaska. So this is my book that came out about a year ago now. So this is probably the 1 year birthday of Seymour, Alaska, since this book came into existence. And then I also gave it an update about 6 months ago. So every summer I work in Alaska for 3 or 4 months and I learn all the new tricks, all the new tips, all the hot spots to know on an Alaska cruise. And then I update the book with that information. So this book has now been updated. Let's get a little poll going in here as well. If you're just tuning in, welcome. Thanks for being here. If you're watching on another platform, we are live on Whatnot. So you can download the Whatnot app and join us over here on Whatnot. Let's do our first poll. Let's see. We're going to see who has been to Alaska, since that's what we're here to talk about today. So I'm curious if you have been there before or if you just want to go. And then let's also add one in that maybe you're already booked to go to Alaska. You haven't taken your trip yet, but you know that you are going, already booked. So our poll is live there. So let me know there in the poll if you've already booked your cruise. But like I said, we are here to talk about Alaska cruises. So this will be a live Q&A. So feel free to drop your questions in the chat. If you have any questions, just let me know. I'd be happy to answer them. But the main questions that come up when talking about an Alaska cruise is people just kind of want to know how it works. And what a lot of people don't realize is that there's two main ways to see Alaska on a cruise. You can either do a round trip cruise. They typically leave from either Seattle or Vancouver. They're usually about a week long. Then you head up to Alaska and you come on back down all in 7 days. So you arrive at the same port you left from, be that Seattle, be that Vancouver. So that's one way, a 7-day round trip. Or you can do a 7-day one-way cruise. Those cruises usually leave from Vancouver and you go 7-day cruise. You go on a lot of the same stops that you would on a round trip cruise. But then instead of coming right back to the same place, you then end up going to somewhere in Alaska, somewhere near Anchorage, usually either Seward or Whittier. So again, we are talking about Alaska cruises. If you have any questions about Alaska cruises, just drop them in the chat. I would be happy to answer them for you. So you've got those round trip that come back to Seattle or they come back to Vancouver, or you can do those one-way cruises. They go to Seward or to Whittier. Usually with those one-way cruises, you would do a 7-day cruise, and then you would combine that with a land tour. So when you get to one of those ports there near Anchorage, you then take off and head up usually to Denali for a few days, either by bus or by train. So those are kind of your two main options to think about when you are thinking about an Alaska cruise. You will either be doing that round trip cruise only, or you can do a one-way cruise. You can combine it with a land tour, or you could do it all on your own. Just depends what you're looking for. So that's something a lot of people don't realize. They just think cruise. Maybe you've taken a Caribbean cruise before. You think a cruise is a cruise. They don't realize that they have that extra option with an Alaska cruise where they can actually be left in Alaska and then have more time to explore on their own. So those are two options you can do. I see we've got one over here on Whatnot already booked your cruise. That's fantastic. Congratulations. Let me know in the chat where your cruise is going, what port you're visiting, where you're leaving from, all that stuff. Now, I mentioned that the round trip, the one-way cruises, visit a lot of the same places. So typically ports that you're going to visit on an Alaska cruise, you're going to go to the capital, you're going to go to Juneau. Most cruises also go to Ketchikan. That's kind of the furthest south Alaskan port that you can visit. And then cruises will also either visit usually Sitka or Skagway. It's not typical that they would visit both of those ports. So one of the two, you're going to go to either Sitka or Skagway. And then most cruises also have some type of glacier day. So with the Glacier Day, maybe you're going to Glacier Bay National Park, maybe you're going to Hubbard Glacier, maybe you're going to College Fjord, but a lot of times with that Glacier Day, you don't go ashore. It's not a port day like other places where you pull in and you get off the ship and go explore. Instead, you stay on the ship, you sail past the glacier, you sail up to a glacier. How close you get kind of depends on what the conditions are that day, but that's usually listed on your itinerary. So you'll typically have 3, maybe 4 ports on an Alaskan cruise, plus then a glacier day as well. So if you've got a 7-day cruise, day 1, you're leaving from either Seattle or Vancouver, and then you've got a day in Juneau, a day in Ketchikan, a day in either Sitka or Skagway, and a glacier day, and then probably 1 day at sea. And then you may also have a day where you would visit, if you're sailing from Seattle, this part gets confusing, but if you're sailing from Seattle, you would then also have to make a stop in Canada as well. So that's a question that comes up a lot too when people look at their itinerary and they see that maybe they're stopping in Victoria on Vancouver Island. They're stopping in Victoria, but they're only there for like 4 hours or 3 hours. And why would that be? Well, it's because if you are on a cruise ship sailing from the US, but it's not flagged in the US, most cruise ships are not flagged in the US, you're not allowed to just sail to US ports. You've also got to make a stop in a foreign port, so you have to stop in Canada as well. So that's why a lot of those round trip Alaska cruises from Seattle will stop in Victoria on Vancouver Island. They've also recently started stopping at Prince Rupert as well. So if you're just joining us, thank you so much. I see over on YouTube, we've got a birthday in the room. Mia, happy birthday to you. I hope you have a great day. It's coming up soon. But we're here to talk about Alaska cruises. My name is Valerie, and I am the author of Seymour, Alaska. This is an Alaska guidebook. And I'm also a cruise director. So I have done at this point, I think 65 Alaskan cruises and then headed back for about 12 or 13 more this summer. So doing quite a few more cruises too. So if you are booked on an Alaska cruise or if you're thinking about an Alaska cruise, I have probably been to the ports that you're headed to. If you have questions about what to do, what to pack, let me know. I've done this before. I've done this a lot. I love talking about Alaska. Happy to help you out. I see there in the chat we have someone that is cruising on New Amsterdam, doing a 14-day cruise leaving from Vancouver. I have done that exact cruise on New Amsterdam for 4 months, so I know exactly what is coming up on your cruise. So that particular cruise that we're talking about, it's a 14-day cruise, so it's that one-way cruise that I was talking about, where you leave from Vancouver and you do 7 days up to Whittier, and then you do 7 days back down. So then you do it in reverse, coming back down. So Jessica, for your cruise in leaving from Vancouver, going to Whittier, on your itinerary, I'm not sure if New Amsterdam still goes there, but check and see if you are going to College Fjord. If you are, it should be the night before you get to Whittier. And I feel like it is one of the best kept secrets in Alaska. And honestly, by then, it's the last night of the cruise for a lot of people. They're not really too interested. You're probably just in Glacier Bay a day or two before. People think, I've seen it, seen glaciers, don't need to go see it again. I'd rather go have dinner or I'd rather go to the show. Don't make that mistake. You've got time to do everything. You can eat dinner, you can go to the show, but make sure you get outside and see College Fjord. It is incredible. If the conditions are right, you can see like 5 glaciers at the same time, which is more than you will see in Glacier Bay. So Glacier Bay is fantastic, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that people kind of overlook College Fjord because they feel like they've already done glaciers. It is such a cool place. So Jessica, make sure you get out there and check out College Fjord. That would be my top recommendation for your cruise headed there. But all of your ports are great. You mentioned that you're going to Skagway first, then to Ketchikan first, then up to Juneau, then to Skagway, and then to Whittier, and then back down. That's a great way to do it because you're getting to do everything twice. So you're headed up to Whittier and then back down. You don't need to rush and see everything. You're going to get to see it on that second week that you are on board. So I think that is a good way if you're not interested in seeing Denali or don't want to do the land trip portion where you do that one-way cruise and then you go explore Denali, inland Alaska. It's a great way to just book that second leg, take that trip back down south. Also on that particular cruise, your actual last day of the cruise, when you are sailing back down south, the day that you are just outside of Vancouver, you'll actually sail between the BC coast and between Vancouver Island, and it gets pretty narrow in places. And there's some fantastic whale watching in that narrow place. If you hear them mention anything on board about when you'll be sailing through the Seymour Narrows or Ripple Rock, that's where it's this really narrow area, and ships actually have to wait for the tide to be just right, for there to be enough water to pass through there. You want to make sure that there's enough water in there to go through, obviously, but you'll actually see these whirlpools in the water that the current creates. Well, it stirs up all this food. The whales love that area, so I've never not seen a whale in that area. So listen for them to mention on board when you're sailing through the Johnstone Strait, Seymour Narrows, Ripple Rock. It's all in that same area. Super beautiful. Great opportunity for whale watching. Get out on deck to see that. So again, if you are just joining us, welcome. Thanks for being here. My name is Valerie. I am a cruise director and I'm the author of the book Seymour, Alaska. This is a guidebook I wrote for Alaskan cruises. I have cruised to Alaska more than 50 times, so if you have any questions, drop them in the chat, either here on Whatnot or over on YouTube. Also here on Whatnot, if you are headed to Alaska or interested in Alaska, wanted to pick up a copy of the book, it is available there in my shop. I've actually only got 4 copies left. If you haven't made a purchase on Whatnot yet, in the show notes, you will see a link to a promo code. When you make your first purchase, you can get $15 off. So that would make this book free for you. So if you're interested in this book, you can grab that code. You can get this book for free. Now, what this book covers is, first of all, it gets into all of the ports. So all the ports that we've been talking about, I mentioned that when you book an Alaska cruise, your ship is almost always going to stop in Juneau. So we've got a chapter on Juneau, chapter on Ketchikan, and then your ship will stop in either Sitka or Skagway. You're not typically going to get both of those on an itinerary. You're pretty lucky if you do. So chapter on Sitka and on Skagway, and then also Icy Strait Point, which is a place that not a ton of ships go to yet. They can only take 2 ships at a time. So we've got a chapter on each one of those. And in each chapter, I break down what to do, what to eat, and then I also give you a sample itinerary. Like, what would the perfect day be? What are the things that you should prioritize? I also tried to give you rainy day options in this book. Alaska is home to the largest temperate rainforest in the world, and rainforests mean rain. Yeah, typically you probably think of a rainforest somewhere tropical, but a temperate rainforest, it's that beautiful, mainly pine forest that you will see all throughout Alaska. I always tell people it's so green because of all the rain that they get. So if you are getting rain on your Alaska cruise, it's not unusual. It's not that you picked a bad week to go. They get a lot of rain up there, okay? So it's just to be expected. So like I say, in the book, I give you some rainy day options, mainly museums. I highlight some of the museums, what are the top features of those in each port. So in case you do get some bad weather, you know where to go. The most important thing, though, is just gearing up for it. Just make sure you've got some rain gear with you, that you've packed rain gear. It's probably not your typical cruise packing list item. People think cruises, they probably think swimsuits and flip-flops. You can take those. There's a pool on board and it's heated, even if it's a chilly cruise. But you can also make sure you take that rain gear with you in case you do get some rainy days. So again, this book breaks down all of those ports that I mentioned, and then it's got a whole chapter on glaciers. We talk about Glacier Bay National Park. Hubbard Glacier, College Fjord, and Tracy Arm and Endicott Arm. Those 4 places are the main glacial hotspots where people will visit on their cruise. So I give you info on each one of those. And then also a chapter about embarkation, disembarkation, where we talk about Seattle, Vancouver, and Whittier as well. After that, we talk a little bit about what are called land and sea packages. So those are going to be your cruises that sail from Vancouver, go up to Seward or Whittier, and then from there you travel overland to inside Alaska, somewhere in the interior. You're going to go to Anchorage, you're going to go to Denali, you're going to go to Fairbanks. Those are your land and sea packages. Then we also talk a bit about the Inside Passage, and then what I just mentioned, that large rainforest. It's actually a national forest. It's called the Tongass National Forest. And then the final section, I give you the details. When should you go? Which room should you book? How much is the cruise going to cost? And what should you take with you? So that is all broken down in Seymour, Alaska. Like I said, though, I am happy to answer whatever questions that you have about cruising to Alaska. Even if it's in the book, I'm happy to answer those questions right now and help you out. This book also available on Amazon. So you can get this book in digital paperback and hardback over there on Amazon, and available on a few ships sailing out of Seattle this summer as well. Just got word that we'll have them on board, so that is pretty exciting. Looking forward to that. So for your packing list, I already mentioned to take rain gear, which might not be something you would think of putting in your cruise suitcase, but you are going to want to take a rain jacket. If you have waterproof shoes, that one is key. That can really make or break your day. No one likes walking around in soggy shoes all day, so take some waterproof shoes with you. Yeah, you can take hiking boots that are waterproof. What I have found to be the most comfortable and the easiest to pack are actually trail running shoes. So Nike makes great trail running shoes. You can also get them from outdoor brands as well, but you're going to want some type of waterproof shoes there too. And then anything else you can take that's waterproof. Like if you have rain pants, either that go on over whatever pants you're wearing, or some type of water resistant pants. Eddie Bauer makes some great adventure like hiking pants that are water resistant. Those can really be helpful too. Just something that's going to keep you dry. At a minimum though, you're going to want to take a jacket. You're going to want to take some waterproof shoes. People ask about umbrellas. You can. I'm not a big umbrella person. I feel like they're just always getting in the way. Alaska can also get really windy, especially on the coast where you're going to be. So an umbrella may not be the best tool to keep you dry just because of how much wind there is out there. So you might want to reconsider the umbrella, go with a rain jacket, go with waterproof shoes, and then some type of pants that would help keep you dry out there as well. Other items that you might not think to take with you. Jessica, thank you so much for the sale. Actually, Jessica, that was my first ever Whatnot sale. So much appreciation. Really appreciate that. I hope you have a fantastic cruise. You're going to love the New Amsterdam. You're going to love that cruise. It's a really great voyage sailing there from Vancouver. So have a great cruise. So other things you may not think to pack on your Alaska cruise: binoculars. That's also not a very common cruise packing item. You've got your swimsuit, you've got your flip-flops. People don't think to put binoculars in there. But one of my favorite things about an Alaska cruise is that on an Alaska cruise, there's always something to see. You're always going to have a chance to see wildlife. I was just mentioning that they're outside of Vancouver when you're sailing between the coast of BC and Vancouver Island. That's a hot spot for whales. Also, the morning as you're sailing into Juneau, you're sailing through a body of water called Stevens Passage. That's a super hot spot for whales, one of the best whale watching places in the state. If you leave Ketchikan heading north and you're sailing north from Ketchikan during the daylight, you go through another area called Snow Pass. Snow Pass, I went through there once last year and I saw 5 whales in about 45 minutes. Just like one right after another. Humpbacks, orcas, they were all around there. But something people don't realize is that a lot of times you are going to need binoculars for those wildlife opportunities. Whales, you can typically see the spout. When whales come up and they exhale, and from the blowhole, you see that spout come up. So you can typically see that. What you might need binoculars for, first of all, you can get a closer look at the whales with them. But in these areas that are pretty narrow that you're sailing through, a lot of times there's bald eagles in the trees. And to the naked eye, it's just going to look like a little white dot in the tree. It just kind of looks like a golf ball. But with binoculars, you can easily see that's a bald eagle. Actually, even in Juneau, when your ship is docked downtown in Juneau, there is Mount Roberts right next to the town, right there where the ship's docked. There's only like one street and some buildings, and then Mount Roberts just goes, the mountainside is just right there. And on all the trees on the mountainside, just keep looking and you can see these white dots, and those are all bald eagles. So take your binoculars, scope those out. In Glacier Bay, I have seen mountain goats, I have seen bears, I have seen a pack of wolves in Glacier Bay, but you need binoculars to really be able to see them. And it's actually surprising how much you will need binoculars, because you'll look out at the scenery and think like it's just right there. If there's a bear, I'm going to see it. It's a bear. Bears are big. I'm going to be able to see it. But the landscape of Alaska is so massive that it like warps our perception of what's actually happening. Like there's these huge mountains that we can't even comprehend how big it is. So even though we think something is just right there, it's actually more than a mile away. Like when you get into the glaciers in Glacier Bay, you're going to think like, oh, that's maybe 100 yards away. Maybe it's a football field away, and it's going to be half a mile or 2 miles. So it's such a big place that even though you think you would see this huge, several 100-pound animal on the coastline, in reality, when there's a bear walking out there, it's just going to look like somebody took a brown pencil and like put a little dot on the coastline. So really important, really helpful if you take along binoculars as well. Another item people don't really think to pack, if you're a national park fan, take along your national park passport. So this is not your federal passport. This is a souvenir passport where you can collect stamps from each of the parks. So whenever you visit a national park in the visitor center, they've got a little cancellation stamp, the name of the park, the date that you visited. Take that along with you. Take that passport along with you, because if you do visit Glacier Bay, the park rangers are going to come on board. They're going to bring that cancellation stamp with them. If your ship visits Skagway, well, Skagway is home to Klondike Gold Rush National Park, so you can get another stamp there. If you're visiting Seattle, there's actually a secondary location of the Klondike Gold Rush Park in Seattle, because a lot of the gold rush hopefuls started their journey in Seattle. They would gear up in Seattle, and then they would head up to Skagway from there to head up to the Klondike Goldfields. So there's a second park unit in Seattle. There you can get the stamp in your passport book. Now, those passport books are sometimes sold on board. I mentioned Glacier Bay. When the park rangers come on board, they will bring items on with them that they can sell. So you may be able to buy one on board. I will say that is the item that seems to sell out the fastest. Into the season last year, we didn't have those passport books available on board because they were just so popular that we sold out of those. So you might want to consider that as well. So if you are just joining, welcome either over on YouTube or here on Whatnot. I am Valerie. I'm the author of Seymour, Alaska. This is a book all about cruising to Alaska. So if you are booked on an Alaska cruise, or if you're just interested in cruising to Alaska, if you've got any questions, throw them in the chat here on Whatnot over on YouTube. Let me know what I can help answer for you, what you are curious about. If you are on Whatnot and want to pick up a copy of this, we've got 3 left for sale. And in the show notes on Whatnot, it does have a discount code. If it's your first time buying on Whatnot, you would be able to get $15 off. So you'd actually be able to nab this guy for free. You'd be able to pick up a copy of it. Let's talk a little bit about glaciers. That's always a very popular question. I mentioned the 4 places where your ship will likely go to see glaciers. You're either going to go to Glacier Bay National Park, or you're going to go to Tracy Arm Fjord or Endicott Arm. They're right next to each other. Or you're going to go to Hubbard Glacier or maybe College Fjord. There are some others, so there could be a chance you're going somewhere else, but those are going to be the 4 main ones. How it actually works, your visit to a glacier, will be a little bit different depending on which cruise line you're sailing on, depending on where you are actually sailing, which one of those 4 hotspots, or another one where you are sailing. But let's start with Glacier Bay National Park, because that's the one that people seem to be the most excited about, have the most questions about. First of all, you will see glaciers in any of those places that I mentioned. So if you weren't able to get a cruise into Glacier Bay, don't panic. If you've got another glacier listed on your itinerary, you'll still get a chance to see glaciers. Just people tend to get excited about Glacier Bay. It is kind of hard to get a cruise into Glacier Bay because there's actually only 2 cruise ships a day that are allowed to sail in the park. So it is limited how many ships can go in there. That's why not every cruise visits Glacier Bay. That's why you've got some other places like Hubbard Glacier or Tracy Arm Fjord. But regardless of where you're sailing, where you're visiting glaciers, how it typically works is that your ship is going to sail in as close as it can get to the glacier. Now, that's dependent on a bunch of things. It's dependent on what the weather is that day. Is it nice and clear, or is it foggy and kind of hard to see if there's ice in the water? It depends on how much ice is in the water as well. If there's a lot of ice and maybe the team can't exactly tell what's going on, they're not going to get that close. They're going to stay a bit further away. It can also depend on what the regulations are. Some places you're just not allowed to get that close to the glacier, and maybe they have to stay a bit further back. It can depend on your itinerary. Maybe you've got somewhere you need to be, so you can't stay that long. But you're going to get as close as the captain decides they can get. Sometimes it is within half a mile or a mile of the glacier. And I know that sounds far, but in reality, it's going to look like you could reach out and touch it. It's going to look like it's maybe a football field away. These glaciers are just so huge. For example, in Glacier Bay, you're probably going to visit either Marjorie Glacier or Johns Hopkins Glacier. If you do, those glaciers are going to be a mile wide at the face. Again, it's not going to look like it's a mile wide, but it's a mile wide at the face, and it sticks out of the water like between 250 and 350 feet, depending on which glacier it is. Also, there's that much ice out of the water, but there's also more than 100 feet of ice beneath the water, which is also why you don't get too close, because they can have something that they call submarine calving, which means part of the glacier under the water breaks off and then this iceberg comes shooting up. Obviously, you don't want your ship to be there when that happens. So that is why you do stay a bit back. Now, I mentioned Hubbard Glacier. In Glacier Bay, those glaciers are a mile wide. At Hubbard Glacier is about 7 miles wide at the face of the glacier. Just an absolutely massive glacier. It's actually the largest tidewater glacier in North America. So it's the largest glacier that meets the sea in North America. So I think some people maybe get a little sad if they weren't able to get a cruise to Glacier Bay and instead they have to go see Hubbard Glacier. To be honest, though, in my expert, if you want to call it that, opinion, I think Hubbard Glacier is more impressive. I haven't met a bad glacier yet. I love them all. But Hubbard Glacier is just so massive, so spectacular. If that is on your itinerary, do not be sad at all, because it is a really incredible place that you get to go see if you are headed to Hubbard Glacier. But you're going to sail in as close as your navigation team decides to get you. And then what typically happens is they'll rotate the ship so that one side gets to face the glacier. Now, which way they turn, if it's going to be the port side or the starboard side that faces it first. It just depends on the geography of that fjord that you're in, what the conditions are like. So I can't tell you which way you're going to turn. But you'll typically turn so one side will face the glacier for maybe 20 minutes, maybe half an hour. And then they're going to turn the ship around so that the other side gets to face the glacier for the same amount of time. So no matter where your stateroom is, if you have a balcony cabin, you'll have time face to face with that glacier. So it is an incredible experience. I think Glacier Day can sometimes be overlooked on an itinerary. You're looking at all the ports. Okay, we're going to go whale watching in Juneau. We're going to go to the Totem Park in Sitka. You've got your plan all down. And then you kind of forget, like, oh, yeah, there's this whole day dedicated to going to see glaciers or a glacier on the itinerary. Don't overlook that day. Make sure you pay attention to any information that the cruise line gives you about when you're going to be at the glaciers. You don't want to miss it. One of the most spectacular parts of Alaska is going to be seeing that glacier. So make sure that you check that out. So if you're just joining us here, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Valerie. I am the author of See More Alaska. This is a book all about cruising to Alaska. I am a cruise director. I have been to Alaska more than 50 times. I think it's been about 65 times now. I will be back in Alaska in just about 2 weeks, headed back there. Less than that now. Actually be a week from Saturday. I will start making my journey back up north to spend another 3.5 months in Alaska. So if you're taking an Alaska cruise, if you're interested in taking an Alaska cruise, you have any questions about how that works, drop them in the chat. We're live both here and over on YouTube as well. So if you've got any questions about your Alaska cruise, please ask. This is a rare chance where you can just ask me directly about your Alaska cruise, and I'll be able to help you out with your planning. Alaska is actually my favorite place to sail. I've been all around the world. I've worked in the cruise industry for 10 years now through a couple different companies, and I would rather be in Alaska or in Canada, New England than anywhere else. I haven't been to Canada, New England in a while, but I think Alaska would actually probably win now, even if I got a chance to go back. A big reason for that is because of all of the scenery that there is. I already mentioned the wildlife. That's something that's pretty unique to an Alaska cruise. If you've cruised before in the Mediterranean, in the Caribbean, maybe over to Hawaii, you know that a lot of times once your ship leaves port, you're kind of just a fare. You're just headed somewhere else. Outside, it's just water until you get to the next island. But in Alaska, almost the entire time, there are mountains on the horizon. At any time, you can see whales outside. So there's always a chance for wildlife spotting. You've got these majestic mountains along the coast. It is just one of the most beautiful places I have ever seen, kind of heart-stoppingly so. Like I feel it in my soul every time I cruise to Alaska. I'm so excited to get back there and see it again because it is such a beautiful place. With that being said, Alaska is one place where I do recommend booking an outside cabin. So definitely a window, but if you can spring for the balcony, I think it is totally worth it on an Alaska cruise. On a cruise that's something like in the Caribbean where you're going to be ashore all day and then you're going to be exploring the ship at night, I don't necessarily think a balcony is worth it. Don't get me wrong. They're great. If you can afford it, go balcony all the time. But I think that there are places where you sail where you can opt for an inside cabin, and then there are places where you should opt for an exterior, for a balcony. And Alaska is definitely a balcony cabin type of place because of that scenery, because of the wildlife spotting opportunities, and because of the day that you spend at the glacier. If you don't have a balcony, you're going to have to be out around the ship with all of the other masses on board, everybody trying to get the right view, the right angle, get that perfect Instagram picture. If you have a balcony, you've got your own private oasis. It can be quiet there. You can have whatever you want going on. You're able to take your pictures in peace. You're able to just enjoy it. how you want to enjoy it. So if you can spring for it, I do suggest a balcony cabin. Oh, we've got a comment over on YouTube. Susie Q, thank you so much. Thank you for your comment about your upcoming cruise. Thank you for watching over on YouTube. Yes, on YouTube, I do have a series called Seymour. So the same as Seymour, Alaska. I do Seymour, Alaska port guide videos or Seymour Caribbean guide videos as well. Susie, happy anniversary coming up in a couple years. She mentioned that she's the reason that she chose Eurodam. Happy to hear it. Eurodam is a great ship, and I hope that you have a fantastic cruise. Not sure if I'll be on Eurodam in 2027. I don't know that far in advance just yet, but you never know. I could be there, but it is a great ship. I hope that you have a great time with them in 2027. Are you headed to Alaska or somewhere else on Eurodam? So Seymour, Alaska is the Alaska guidebook, and then there are those port guide videos over there on YouTube as well. And actually, in the latest edition of this book, there's actually at the very end, there's then a QR code that you can scan and a URL if you're not familiar with the QR codes that will take you to my YouTube page where you're able to catch all of those port videos as well. So headed to Alaska, round trip Seattle. Fantastic, Susie. You're going to love it. That's a cruise that I have done. That particular cruise I have done, I think 50 times. I've done that round trip Seattle cruise. And then I also spent a season doing the cruise that we mentioned here earlier, that one-way cruise from Vancouver up to Whittier and back down. So I did that for 4 months. So those are the other 15 cruises that I've done, but I'll be doing Seattle round trip all summer as well. So lots more Alaska content coming your way on all of my channels since I do head back there very soon. And we'll be back in Alaska for the summer. Really, really looking forward to it, and I hope that you are as well. So when your Alaska cruise starts, again, your two main choices are that you can either go from Seattle or from Vancouver. Which one to pick, I would say, really depends on what your personal travel arrangements are. If it's easier to get a flight to Seattle or Vancouver, you can go with that. Even though I cruise from Seattle round trip most of the time, I actually think that cruises from Vancouver might be a little bit better because they do give you more time in port. First of all, Vancouver's a little closer to Alaska because it is further north. Then, as I was mentioning earlier, if you are taking a cruise from Seattle to Alaska, you're going to have to stop in a Canadian port on the way back down. You can't just go from Seattle to Alaska and then back to Seattle. You've got to make a stop in Canada. So you get kind of a bonus port, if you will, but it is usually just a quick stop in Victoria. Because of that, your stop in Ketchikan is pretty short. You've got to leave in the early afternoon to make it there. If you're sailing from Vancouver, you're not going to get that stop in Victoria. Instead, you're going to get all day in Ketchikan. So that could be something to consider as well. Both are great options, though if it's easier for you to get to Seattle, nothing wrong with taking that cruise from Seattle. Like I said, that's my bread and butter. That's what I do all the time. But if it's just as easy for you to get to Vancouver, you might want to consider that as well, that you could head up there and sail from Vancouver, maybe get a little bit more time in port. Plus, you will then have the chance of sailing through the Johnstone Straits that I mentioned is a great spot for whale watching as well. Let's talk about some wildlife that you might see if you want to know some wildlife tips. I already mentioned the whales. Outside of Juneau, great place to see them. If you arrive in Juneau in the late morning or early afternoon, which a lot of Alaskan cruises do, plan on spending that morning out on deck. So exactly what time that it will be depends on what time your ship comes in, but if you are arriving at, say, noon or 1 o'clock, really between 7 and 9 in the morning is a great time to be out on deck watching for whales. Plus, you have a chance to pass a glacier in the distance. So you've got these mountains around you. You can see a glacier, hopefully whales popping up everywhere. So keep that in mind. be out on deck that morning. And then if you're sailing to Glacier Bay, the entrance and the exit of Glacier Bay, fantastic place to see whales. It's where a body of water that is called Icy Strait meets the Setacade Narrows. Setacade Narrows is what takes you into Glacier Bay. Right there at that intersection, a lot of food for the whales. They love it there. In general, whales tend to like a place where a big body of water becomes a narrower body of water because it kind of funnels all the food into one area. So you can count on that as being a great place for some whales to show up. So the entrance, the exit of Glacier Bay, it's all the same place, one way in, one way out. In the bay itself, you might see some whales. It's not typical. I have seen them up there. I've seen both humpbacks and orcas up in the bay. It just gets so narrow, the whales don't really love it in there. But same with like a place like College Fjord. The entrance to College Fjord, good place for whales. Once you're in the fjord, not so much. Other places for whales, I've seen them outside of Sitka a lot, which is also very fun because there in Sitka, there's a volcano, Mount Edgecombe volcano, and I have seen a whale breach with a volcano behind it, which just doesn't get any better than that. Speaking of volcanoes, Alaska is actually the state with the most volcanoes. Most people, of course, think it's Hawaii, but it is actually in Alaska where there's the most volcanoes. Probably the only one you'll see on your cruise most likely would be Mount Edgecombe there outside of Sitka. Other wildlife you're going to see, we talked about bald eagles, the trees there at Juneau on Mount Roberts, right behind the town, often loaded with bald eagles. I think that they say in Juneau that the population of humans and bald eagles is pretty much the same. So you've got a good chance of seeing them there. If you're headed to Icy Strait Point, again, I mentioned not a ton of ships go there, but if you are going to Icy Strait Point, the trees that run parallel to the cruise ship port, right there, I've seen bald eagles there. They actually have a nest there, and I'm told that when there aren't ships in, that the bald eagles actually hang out directly on the pier, and then they get kind of annoyed when the ships come in because that's their pier and they have to move because there's a ship. So good chance to see bald eagles there. I've seen them in Ketchikan a lot as well. If you're looking for salmon, lots of people think of salmon when they think of Alaska for good reason. And good places to see salmon, Ketchikan. In Ketchikan, there's a place called Creek Street. Creek Street is this street that is built on stilts over Ketchikan Creek. It's actually said to be the most photographed street in Alaska for good reason. It is a beautiful, beautiful area. All these colorful buildings, this boardwalk over the creek. And then later in the cruise season, so sometime like July, August, even into September, there'll be salmon running in Ketchikan Creek. So you'll see them jumping. You'll just see, if you look kind of in the pools, you'll be able to see a lot of salmon there. Also, seals hang out there, hoping to catch a little salmon snack. So if you're there early in the season, like if you are headed there next week or in 2 weeks, like I am, it's still too early to see the salmon in Ketchikan. Later in the season, into July, August, September, that's when you're going to be seeing those salmon. Another great place to see them is in Sitka. If your cruise does stop in Sitka, head over to the Sitka National Historic Park. You can also get a passport stamp there. I mentioned the national park passports earlier, and I forgot to mention you can get one in Sitka too. Over there in Sitka, in that National Historic Park, there is this totem trail. So you walk the coastline, and they have about a dozen totem poles, which are gorgeous to check out. Then running right through the middle of the park is what's called Indian River. Through there in Indian River, packed full of salmon later in the season. It's usually in July. They show up there, and I have seen thousands of salmon. There's a pedestrian bridge that crosses over it in the park. Just look straight down into the water, and it is just chock full of salmon. Also a good place to see bald eagles, hoping to grab a salmon snack, and they do have some bear activity there as well, so just keep an eye out, make some noise as you're out there walking around, headed for some salmon in the park. Other wildlife that I get asked about are otters. Sea otters were kind of too popular in Alaska back in the day. They were hunted to near extinction because they had this incredible fur. 1 square inch of sea otter fur has more hair than you have on your entire head. Sorry if you're bald, but even if you're not, more than on your entire head is in 1 square inch of sea otter fur. So it is just this very dense fur that would also keep people really warm. So that made them very sought after. So unfortunately, they were hunted to near extinction. Now, though, they've made a great recovery. So, of course, people want to see sea otters. They're so cute. They're so cuddly. They're often floating on their back, maybe with a little oyster to munch on or something. So, places you can see sea otters in Alaska. If you want to see them from the ship, Glacier Bay is going to be your best bet. I would actually say that it would be nearly impossible to not see a sea otter in Glacier Bay because they are just all over the place. I have seen them all the way at the face of Marjorie Glacier to all the way down where I was mentioning the entrance, which is also the exit to the bay. You're able to see them there as well. There in Setaka de Narrows, I've just seen them one right after another. You can see them in Sitka as well, but you're probably going to need to take a tour to see sea otters in Sitka. They're just not usually on the path that the ship takes, so you might want to consider booking a tour, especially if your ship goes to Sitka but doesn't go to Glacier Bay and you want to see otters. You'd be looking at booking a tour to go there. So if you've just joined us, I've seen a few people pop in. Welcome. Thanks for being here. My name is Valerie. I am a cruise director and I am the author of See More Alaska. This is a guidebook all about how to get the most out of your Alaskan cruise. I have cruised to Alaska 65 times at this point, and I am headed back there in just a few short days. So I've actually probably will have to stop live streaming and go pack my suitcase sometime soon because I haven't even started yet, and I leave in less than a week, so headed back to Alaska very, very soon. If you want to know more about cruising in Alaska, I tried to put all of the most common things that I get asked here in this book. All right, I've done this for several years now. I actually hold question and answer sessions on board where I go over the top things to see and do in ports, and then I answer people's questions that they have about where we're headed. I tried to take all of that information, put it in one quick guide for you. So I've broken it down by port, what to see, what to do, where to eat, and then I also give you like a sample itinerary. If you were just going to pick the must-do items, what would they be for each port? So I listed it all out in here. So this book is available on Whatnot. If you're watching us on Whatnot, I've got 3 copies left for you. If you have not made a purchase yet on Whatnot, in the show notes of this show, you will actually see a discount link. If you go there, you're able to get $15 off your first purchase, and this book is $15, so you would be able to grab this free to help you plan your Alaska cruise. Also, this book is available on Amazon, so you can get it in digital, paperback, or hardback over there on Amazon as well. So up to you where you would like to get it. Or like we were mentioning, I do have port guide videos on YouTube, so you're able to find those. Just look for See More Port Guide. So again, it's SEA More, same as like my username here on Whatnot. See More. So I have the See More guide to Juneau, the See More Alaska guide to Ketchikan, all available for you there on YouTube. There, I'm actually out in the port for most of those videos, showing you things like where the cruise ship docks, different museums you can check out, different activities that you can take. I just released a Glacier Bay National Park video about a week ago. Sadly, I never have time to make that video in Glacier Bay, but I was able to use the park map, walk you through it, show you a bunch of footage from my previous visits there. So hopefully that will answer all of your Glacier Bay National Park questions as well. So if you do have questions about an Alaska cruise, throw them in the chat right now. We're probably going to wrap up pretty soon, but if you've got any questions, I want to make sure I answer them, get you as much information as I can. Alaska is a place where I love sailing. I love talking about it. And I also really love helping people get ready for their Alaskan cruise. It can be an overwhelming place. There are a lot of things to see, a lot of things to do. You're only going to have 7 days there in most cases, 1 day in each port. So it's hard to wrap your mind around. Also, there's just so much information. If you start looking for Alaska cruises, there's just so much information out there about what to see and what to do. That's why I really tried to make this as concise as possible to just get you the information you need, help eliminate some of that overwhelm for you, to help you get the most out of your day in port, just like it says right there. All right, so we've got a question over on YouTube about Juneau. If you want to see Mendenhall and spend some time there exploring the trails, what is the best way to get there? Great question. So, Mendenhall Glacier is Alaska's most accessible glacier. It's one of the only glaciers that you can access from the main road system. A lot of the glaciers are going to be like what you have seen in Glacier Bay or Tracy Arm Fjord. You're just in the middle of wilderness, and then there's a glacier, which is spectacular. But Mendenhall is just a few miles outside of downtown Juneau. I think it's maybe 11 miles at the most. Yeah, 12 miles. So just check the book. 12 miles outside of downtown Juneau. So ways to get there, it can be tricky. For being the most accessible, it's actually not as easily accessible as I would like it to be. Ways you can get there. First of all, you can take a tour. There's everything, and it can be a tour through your ship. It can be a tour booked independently. There's everything from just what's essentially a shuttle service out there. It's going to tell you what time they're going to pick you up, tell you what time you need to be back to the bus to bring you back. That's going to be one of the easiest ways to do it because it's all just set. You're going to go out at this time, you're going to come back at this time, and they usually have a set amount of time that you can explore. Usually, I think about 2 hours that you are able to do that. It used to be, and this is what kind of makes planning an Alaska cruise tricky, because it used to be that they had this shuttle service out to Mendenhall Glacier, and you didn't have to book a return time back. So you could just go out whenever you want, come back whenever you want. It was called the Blue Bus. And so you'll still see things online about the Blue Bus. It was a fantastic service, but it was actually almost too popular because not last cruise season, but the year before that, they actually ran out of passes. So Mendenhall Glacier is managed by the National Forest Service, and there are a certain amount of passes that tour operators get. You need a pass to get in there, so if you buy a tour, they assign you one of these passes. They ran out of passes, the company that operates the Blue Bus service, they ran out of passes on July 4th. There was a whole lot of the Alaska cruise season to come after July 4th. So it was just in such high demand, passes were just flying off the shelf. So they had to eliminate that service. So now they've gone to this scheduled service. So that is going to be the easiest way to do it. You'll know how much time you have, and you'll have time to just explore and then be back at the bus at that time. Now, you can also take a taxi out there as well. With that, though, a trick becomes those passes that I mentioned. Taxi drivers, as I understand it, taxi drivers are able to charge whatever they want for those passes. Mendenhall Glacier, if you just like show up on your own, if you had a rental car, say you show up on your own, you could buy your entrance into Mendenhall Glacier, at least last year. I haven't checked it for this year, but it was $5 a person. Well, there were reports of taxi drivers charging like $17 a person. So they would give you what the taxi fare was, but then you would get there and they'd be like, oh, also you owe us $17 per person for this pass to be able to get in. That still could be the right option for you if you do want to spend time there exploring the trails. Just you need to have that conversation with your taxi driver ahead of time. Make sure you know how much it is really going to cost you. The good thing with that is it would just be the one-time fee, right? You would have your fare out there. They would charge you for that entrance. And then when it's time to come back, it's just going to be your fare back into town. You're not going to have to pay the $17 or whatever it may be per person that next time. So just have that conversation, know what it is, set up a time for them to come back and get you as well. The other option, and if you're okay with a walk, if you want to dedicate most of your day to Mendenhall Glacier, is you can actually take the public bus closer to Mendenhall Glacier. It's going to drop you off on the main road, and then you do still have a bit of a walk to get into the glacier from there. And then when it's time to go, you would just walk out back there to that bus stop. I also know people that have rented bikes in town. Like I said, it's about 12 miles out to the glacier. So if you're fine with that, it's a pretty straight shot. There's not a lot of roads in Juneau, so pretty straight shot to get there. You could rent bikes. Like I said, it's not the easiest place to get to, unfortunately, but those would be your options. If you're looking for the easy, simple one, just book that transfer out there, either through your ship or through a local tour operator. They get you out there. They let you know what time you need to be back. Yeah, renting a car can be a great option as well. I've also looked at Turo, the app, Turo, the app where you can rent cars. I've seen quite a few options on there. Just depends on what day you're there and what people have going on. I was planning on doing that in Juneau last season, and unfortunately something came up and I wasn't able to do it. But yeah, that can be an option. You can then head out and just have your own schedule. That's always something that trips me up in port anywhere I sail, not just in Alaska, where you've just got such a limited time, so many things you want to see and do. How does it work? I, for one, love a road trip. That's actually what I spent my vacation doing. I was on a California road trip for the first 10 days of my vacation, because then you get to set your own schedule. So renting a car is a great way to do that. So again, the book is Seymour, Alaska, SEA, Seymour, Alaska. Check for the port guide videos on YouTube, Seymour, Alaska Guide to whatever it is that you are looking for. I've got 3 more copies for sale of this book here on Whatnot. Feel free to snap those up, or this is available on Amazon in digital, paperback, and hardback, and available on a few ships sailing in Alaska this summer as well. So if you come on board and realize, I have no idea what to do, what am I supposed to see in these ports, you could grab it on board, but obviously much better to snag this beforehand whenever you are planning your cruise. If you haven't cruised to Alaska, definitely consider going to check it out. Something that I have noticed the past few seasons in Alaska is that it just keeps getting more and more popular, but that means that it keeps getting more and more expensive. Both the cruises are getting expensive, the attractions are getting more expensive every season because it is in such high demand. Alaska is really limited by how many ships can sail there. There's only so many docks in each port, so it's very hard to send more ships to Alaska because they're just running out of space. So it's just going to get more expensive to sail to Alaska every angle you look at it. So if it is something you're interested in, I do recommend going sooner rather than later, because that demand is just going to keep going up because it continues to be one of the best places to sail. So I thank you all for being here. I thank you for tuning in. If you are headed to Alaska, I hope you have an amazing, amazing cruise there. I know you will. I hope you see tons of whales, bears, glaciers, anything else that you're looking to see. I hope you see it on your cruise. Thank you so much for watching. You can find me over on YouTube with those Seymour port guides. I hope you have a great cruise. Thanks so much for joining me. Have a fantastic day.